There is no exact blueprint for what we face with the COVID-19 virus. There is, however, support for McGraw-Hill 612 Network social studies as students and teachers embark on an unprecedented remote learning plan. These procedures demonstrated in this video will apply, for the most part, to all copyrights of our network's programs. My name is Tim Reed, National Curriculum Specialist for McGraw-Hill K-12 Social Studies. There are support websites existing and recently created in response to school closures and the reliance on remote learning. I suggest that you start with a visit to mheducation.com and look at the link that takes you to support for schools and learners affected by coronavirus. You'll find support for remote learning, which includes information on rostering, setting up classes, and guides. If you're using networks, you already have the ability to teach your course remotely. And that's what we'll focus on in this video. Topics such as finding and printing resources, assigning resources in text lessons and guided notes, looking at the student view and the interaction between the teacher and the student, looking at our adaptive and personalized LearnSmart and how you can use that remotely. The ConnectEd app, what is it and what devices can I use it on? And other support resources listed at the Social Studies Resources link on the screen. The ConnectEd app works with the network's programs, and the teacher can find that launching the app and launching the store on their teacher homepage of their account. The ConnectEd app works with tablets, Chromebooks, and smartphones. Once the students have landed at the app homepage, they have the ability to download the full book on tablets and Chromebooks, and chapter by chapter on a smartphone, so that if necessary, they can read the text offline. That is the primary purpose of the app, so that students without internet activity or connections can read their book offline. Now, available from the app are program resources such as Reading Essentials and Study Guide, guided reading activities, and our award-winning adaptive study tool, LearnSmart. Now, with LearnSmart, the students need to be online to work with LearnSmart using the app. So I'm going to open up my teacher edition in my ConnectEd programs. And I'm going to look at first how to find and print resources and assign those resources, as well as text lessons and guided notes. Let's open up the teacher edition. Finding resources, there are two places, lesson plans and resources tab. If I look at the resources tab, I can search by lesson, chapter, and lesson. I can search by keyword. I can look at the tags up at the top. If I'm in a chapter and a lesson, I should be able to see all of the resources, such as this guided reading activity. If I want to look at the guided reading activity, I can look at the guided reading activity, assess whether or not I want to use this, and I can print this resource and deliver it to my students. This activity can also be assigned to students, and it can be assigned through this system using this link right here that says assign this resource. It can also be shared with Google Classroom, and then you can use this resource in Google Classroom. If I click on assign this resource, it takes me to my Manage and Assign tab, where I would name my resource. I would fill in my instructions for the students. I can select my start date, due date, and expiration date. Start date is the date that students will see the assignment. Due date is when you want them to submit it. Expiration date is the date the students will no longer see their assignment. I'll talk about the discussion thread in a little bit. You can see that the guided reading activity is attached. If I would like to attach other resources, such as the lesson or the note-taking guide, I can click on Edit, select the Student Edition tab, go to the chapter I would like, and most of what the student would fill in is found in the lesson or the activities and assessment. I can add that lesson activity, and then I can actually add the notebook for that lesson as well. I select Done, and those items are now attached. I can select the student and or students I want to receive this activity, this assignment, and then click Assign. Let's take a look at the student view now. I will launch my textbook as a student. I can see that my assignment is on the to-do list, and so they would click on the to-do list. Here are the 3 items that we selected. If I am, as a student, want to go straight to the reading, I can click on the lesson and read the lesson here. If there is a page where I would write in an answer, I can do that as I go through this lesson. I could even do this before my lesson was assigned, and it would still show up there. Now, there are resource questions as well as review questions with this lesson, and the students would fill in those answers. And of course, they would save this, and it would save on the cloud. So they must save, or there may be times when it doesn't take, but they need to click on Save. Once the students are finished with this lesson and they're ready to submit, they would click on the My Assignments, and they could see that there is a Submit button with that assignment. Now, the teacher can see what the student is writing in the lesson and on the guided reading notes, even before the student would submit this. So think about the possibilities of helping those students who are struggling and or procrastinating. Now, a student, you could ask the students to upload things here as well. And so there is the upload button here. So maybe a student works with a foldable, and they take a picture of that and they upload the foldable that goes along with this lesson. Or perhaps you have them writing an assignment on a Word document. They could then upload this. And then there's all this possibility with Google Classroom if you go through the assigning with Google Classroom as well. Now we're back in the teacher account, and I want to take a look at how that completion of the assignment by the student, so to speak, would look in the Manage and Assign. So I click on the Manage and Assign tab. I click on my details of the assignment, and I see that none of the students have submitted or uploaded any files, and as I mentioned earlier, I can still see their details. So I'm going to take a look at the details of this student and move down, and I can see that this first one is a progress check by my answer, and then after the progress check come the review questions, and so the student has answered the review questions there. As I continue down, I would see questions based on any resource like a map or a video or a primary source. And then at the end here, since we added the guided notes, I see that here are the guided notes and a student answer for the first question. Now, if as a teacher I want to help the students along prior to their submitting, I could say, take a closer look at question number 1 and be more specific. And the teacher would save that comment, and the student come in and look at their assignment and see the teacher comments right here. And so then they can go ahead and respond to those teacher comments. I mentioned earlier that a teacher has a couple of ways of finding resources and then printing them or assigning them. I showed you the Resources tab. The Lesson Plan tab allows you to do the same things that we just did, but looking at a chapter, either at a glance or the individual lessons. And when I open up that and look at my, say, chapter level resources, I can see that information about that resource is on the left side, and then the resource would be on the right side with the same tools and a pull-down menu. So we're back at the Teacher Edition homepage, and I mentioned that we would look at LearnSmart, the adaptive and personalized study tool for the students. And both in the student and the teacher accounts, LearnSmart would be a featured resource down here at the bottom, as well as a tab on the lesson tabs. If I click on LearnSmart tab, I see that LearnSmart is the first resource result, and I'll click on that. Now, as a teacher, I have the ability to generate practice tests, so pre-tests here if I would like. I can look at reports for the students. I can try this as a student, and then I can assign out this item. Now, I would like you to know that you do not have to assign this item for the students to actually see it, use it, work with it, study the content, and learn the basics with LearnSmart. You would still be able to see the reports as you come in here for the reports, but let's go ahead and take a look at how, if I wanted to assign this, I would be able to assign it. So I'm going to click on Assign, and know that the classes that you have established in ConnectEd for Networks are also the classes that you have in here with LearnSmart. So I would first set the deadline for the course, and that deadline might be May, it might be June, and so I'm going to go ahead and click on the 12th of June. Now I can actually customize this and further reduce down what I assign to my students by selecting or deselecting the modules. If I want to go in and actually customize the lessons, I can take away the lessons that I feel I may not be covering. In this case, it looks like I would be covering all of those. I can select the depth or shallowness of the content. Now, what this does is it really focuses on the major objectives. And so if you go more shallow with this, you will be still covering the primary objectives. You may be dropping off on some of those secondary objectives. And so then I would continue there. I could also make the due dates different by clicking on the due date and setting up a different date. The other item here is if I want to set up a pretest, I can go ahead and go into the pretest, select the name, the number of questions, and include which modules I would like. The reports for the teacher, again, whether or not you've assigned this, would look like this. I'm going to go ahead and go to the sample reports, and it's a little bit smaller so you can see the various types of reports that I have. The progress overview would provide me with information that pertains to my progress as a student for each of the chapters and the time spent. The module details would break it down in a different way. One of the most helpful for the teachers is the most challenging learning objectives. So the teacher can go in and take a look at those most difficult learning objectives and perhaps do a mini lesson or refocus their attention on those concepts. From the student homepage, a student would click on the LearnSmart tab to then access their assignments through LearnSmart. They click on their section name, take any pretests that they have outstanding, and go to the chapter and lesson. Now, there are a couple of other ways that the teacher can interact with the student. The first is the messaging at the top of the page. These messages that the teacher creates could be assigned out to a single student or a class of students. The subject could be an alert such as remember to finish your guided reading by Friday. The other is right next to the messaging in the My Manage and Assign tab. It's called My Discussions. My Discussions is usually disabled for the teachers at the beginning of your account. You would have to enable that. Now you could then set up discussion threads, such as using the essential question or something that you want students to comment on as they read through a lesson. And so you can actually monitor this as well so that the students wouldn't be posting something that you wouldn't see what their comment is. So that's called moderating the discussion. Now the other item is the assessment. So the assessment is the test generator that includes chapter tests as well as quizzes and additional tech-enhanced questions. The pre-made tests are found in the test library. Under My Tests, English and Spanish are both here. If I click on the English, I click on the title to change that to Chapter 1, I see my quizzes, my additional questions, and my Test 1 and Test 2. If I want to manipulate this test, I would select the settings cog, copy this test, and then it would be my own, and I can customize that how I would like. I can print that test at that point in time, and I would have some options to how I assign that test out. If I wanted to assign this as is, I could click on Assign to the class, and it would allow me certain options, such as closing this until I have scheduled a particular time that I want this test to be administered. I could select individual students or all students. I could require a password for access, and then I would simply assign this to my class. Once the teacher has assigned the test and it's open, or when the time period comes for the student to be able to take that test, the student would go into their account and click on the Assess tab. If they have an assessment that is ready, they would click on the Take Now in the Options column. The student would answer the questions as they go through this digital environment, using a highlighter if they prefer, a notepad, maybe even a line reader, to help make their assessment experience more successful. Now the teacher would be able to come in after the student has taken the test, click on their assessment, and look at the quizzes that they have assigned and view the results. They can see the progress and scores for each of the students, and they can look at the score sheet to see the right and wrong answers of that student. The other view for the results would be item analysis. Once the students have completed taking their assessment, this test can be exported to a CSV file, which gives you a spreadsheet of their results. I could also add this to my in-networks gradebook that allows me to see students' progress as well as class progress over time. We've looked briefly at these topics of how networks supports digital remote learning. My goal was to provide you an understanding of the wealth of engagement you can have with your students using networks in remote learning. Remember to check out the detailed videos and operations found in the other support resources listed on this page. Thank you so much.